What's up, guys? All right, I'm back to working on the Supra. Today might be a kind of big one. We'll see how it goes. We're gonna start working on trying to fit a BMW rack into the old Mark III and see if it works. So what I have here is a steering rack out of a, I believe it is a 330 Ci, early 2000s, E46. This is just an E46 rack. They're all pretty much the same from what I could tell. Some of them have different turn and stuff. This one's turn ratio is very close. It's a little more, so it's probably gonna slow the steering down a little bit, but I think it'll be all right still. So this all goes well. This could be pretty good for other Mark III guys who are running into leaking racks and you can't buy them anymore. You can't get even remans even, so maybe this will work. One of the first things we're gonna do, or one of the first things I did, was I came and I found the center of the rack. I made sure the steering was centered. I have all those marks there from figuring all that out. So I made sure the rack was centered and found the center of the body, and it's all right about here. And then I did the same here. I centered the steering wheel and I found roughly the center. I know I have two marks, it's kind of confusing. And then I found the center of the cross member itself. So ideally, it's obviously not going to mount the same. I'm probably going to have to cut, put some angle iron, do a like double shear setup here. But ideally, it'll just sit here centered. One of the hard parts I'm going to need to figure out, well, there's a lot. But one of the main parts I need to figure out is the steering shaft is going to end up about here, roughly, I imagine. It's different spline style, so I'll be making a different steering shaft, likely. But one of the big concerns is it going to clear this, the pedestal for the engine mount? And if it doesn't clear that, can I just notch this, put a piece of tube in, not get in the way of the bolts and everything? I don't know. We're going to have to figure that out. Maybe even get a steering shaft kit where I could put a Heim inline up here to kind of just change the angle of it to work around this. With the engine in, I don't have anything in the way over here. The intake's, however high up. So engine-wise, there's nothing going to be in the way. The only thing that's potentially in the way will be the engine mount. And I think we'll be able to work around that. The next thing is, it's not the same width. So we're going to have to figure that out with either tie rods or build some kind of spacer. But with the angle kit, if you notice, it'll, bolt your tie rod down lower than it was. Which if you look, the tie rod and the control arm are not at the same angle anymore. That gives you considerable bump steer. So if I could find the right mounting point and distance and length, tie rods and everything, I might be able to get everything back in line again, so that way it doesn't have bump steer. So that's the goal for today. We'll see how much I get done. This might have to be a multi-part video. We'll see. As far as everything else is going, I did get the spring rates changed. I didn't show that on video, but I got them changed, and then when the car's all back together on the ground, I'll corner balance it, and I'll kind of show you guys how I did that. So I think for the first step, I'm just going to remove this rack for now. Maybe even just unbolt it and then swing it under so I can set the new rack here and see exactly where the input is going to line up. And from there, just kind of be able to figure out if it's going to be doable or if I'm just returning this new steering rack and finding another way about it. But this rack leaks incredibly bad. I don't know, do I just have really bad luck with steering racks? I'm not really sure. But I'm going to start dinking away at it, and we'll see how far I get. I got a buddy coming over who has a lot more fab experience than I do. And so I think with our minds together, we'll be able to make something happen. So once I get everything kind of figured out, I'm gonna drop this cross member and hopefully just be able to put it up on my table and be able to fab the mounts or whatever else I need out of the car on the table, and be able to ideally be able to measure. I've already kind of measured if throw is going to be correct, and I do believe the throw is going to be the same, so we should have the same amount of turn radius. Just speed is going to be different, I think. You know, I'm figuring it out as I go. Remove that pinch bolt, and I'll loosen this one up. I don't think I need to remove that one all the way. And this should leverage is always your friend. So we'll set that out of the way for now. So now, can you guys see it? Yeah, you can see it. Remove these rack mounting bolts. Well, those didn't sound very good. Those threads are a little gummed up. Hopefully this works so we don't have to reuse those. And then there's one from the other direction. Alright, and with that, all the hardware holding the rack in place is out. Obviously we still have it connected to the knuckles and the tie rods, or connected to the tie rods, connected to the knuckles, you know. But let's just maneuver this out of the way here, like so. Look how bad that's leaking. That's just all crap from the boot, man. When I pulled it off, it was freaking Niagara Falls over here. As you can tell, it's all filthy from the little bits of oil leak I had mixed with the steering rack leaks. So I think, in case I gotta return this rack, I'm gonna lay some paper towels, some shop rags right up here. Oh, this is just plugging this up to keep dirt out of there. That way I have a place to set the rack where I can still see my center mark. So this will be interesting because the lines usually want to hit the, yeah, the lines want to hit the, that's in really a bad spot. This might not be feasible. I mean, of course it's gonna sit down lower. It's not sitting all the way in. But if that's the center, right now it's going right through that mounting pedestal. So this is why I was kind of talking about cutting this out and adding some angle iron, so that way the lines will fit and it'll sit down where it needs to, because it's obviously way high right now. Well, I'm really not sure if that's going to work. Alright guys, it's a new day in the shop. Yesterday I did, a little poorly at recording, had a buddy over. But today we're back to working on the front cross member to fit a BMW rack in here. Yesterday, it looks ugly right now. I'm just making sure it fits before I completely cut it all out. But I think today's going to be the day I just cut it all out and see what happens. So cut this out just to make sure the rack fits in as far as I need it to. And then these are the old mounts for the factory steering rack. So after everything's all fitted, grind this all down, spritz it with a little bit of paint. I took it to the car wash this morning, cleaned it up a little bit so it looks a lot nicer. And we'll see what I can do today as far as fitting that rack. I bought some angle iron. So the idea here is going to be cut out a chunk where we can place this angle iron in, do a top piece of metal so we could double shear mount it, obviously drill a hole so it'll mount, and then we see if we can clear the polyurethane engine mount because it puts it in a bad spot, but we're going to figure it out, see if it works, and if not, oh well, I got another cross member in a parts car out back actually, so I don't really want to pull it out and swap it, but worst comes to worst, I have that. Next weekend we'll hopefully be racing these jalopies out on the old big lake. It's been too warm to do it the last couple race days, and it's finally cold again, and we'll see if we can go racing next weekend. But for now, alright, I got the Impreza moved out of the way of the front of the garage. Let's go back in and do some work. Now that I've finally located my silver Sharpie, because you guys know how it goes, set something down and then spend all your time searching for where the heck you set it down at. I'm gonna continue these lines, make them as straight as possible with each other so everything's symmetrical and in shape. So we're gonna straight edge to about the end of this mount, about 1 3/4 inches. So over here we'll come out another 1 3/4 inches. And then from there we'll just bring it down and just kind of try and open up this window more so we could fit the angle iron in there nice and clean like. So there's this little inner support that I ended up perfectly cutting on somehow on both sides. So I'm going to keep that in place. I'm just going to try and tap it in a little better so that way I can use that to close this off. And then once the angle iron's in here, I'll find a piece that fits in there that I can cut to shape and then weld that off just to fully box in this section. And it should maintain all of its rigidity, if not a little bit more, once I put that angle iron in there. And then obviously I'll clean cut these guys where I cut off the mount. I'm just kind of keeping those in place just in case I gotta try and put it back to how it was. Alright, I got the important parts of the car covered over here for sparks. I got my safety glasses on and about 3 1/4 inch holes. So I'm gonna start cutting those guys out. Alright, so as we saw, that section of mount is now popped off. So that's handy, that gets that out of the way. This piece, it'll be on once we cut that out. So now I think I'll just connect the bottoms, try and make it as level as possible, but I'm gonna have to cut out more of that bottom anyways. So I'm also not too worried about it, but I'm gonna cut less than I need to. Cut that. That piece is removed. That piece is removed. Next step, I bought plenty of this, and plus I can always go buy more. But I'm gonna cut 3 1/4 out of this so it fits in there. And then from there, we'll see what the next move is. All right, now my angle iron fits in there. Obviously it'll be cleaned up better than this on the final product, but trust the process. I don't even really have a process, that's just what I'm telling myself. I do have this sitting somewhat decent, actually, of where I want it. Alright, so with this, I measured and I'm trying to match where the old rack was sitting. As long as it sits about the same distance inward and outward. Fore and aft, I guess you can say. So if it sits like this, grab my straight edge here without completely upsetting the rack. Go to my tie rod points. From here, it would line up pretty well with the factory location. But ideally it would want to move in more so it's in line with the new location. And what I mean by new location is I have the high steer, or not the high steer, sorry, that's off-road crap. The angle kit. So it moves the steering point inward, obviously. But I think that's going to sit pretty happy, really. Alright, at this point I do believe I have the steering rack sitting where I want it. It's from the factory location, it's about the same distance from the cross member to the output of the steering, and from this height it is almost identical. And right now it's centered, so ideally it's gonna have to sit angled up. I'm gonna have to angle these angle pieces in and then build my top shear mount up over this. I think I'll tie it into here and then tie it into that. That way it doesn't move. I mean, obviously I'm gonna have to make this a lot cleaner because really you're not gonna see it, but the quality of work I want to put on this thing, this is already kind of but I think I can make it look good. And then as of right now, I'm gonna need a different steering shaft coupler because this is for the Supra and it does not fit on the BMW rack, go figure. But I do believe that when that's sitting down where it should, I will have the clearance I need from the engine mount and still not have too much angle, because even that is sitting way lower than it is, and ideally it would work. So it'll be about there. So I think we're looking pretty good, actually. This is going, I don't know, I expected it to be bad, and it is kind of bad, but at the same time it's not too bad, you know. So I'll keep plucking away. Sorry, I'm probably not the best at videoing all these processes, but it gives you an idea anyways. Alright, so right now I have my angle iron sitting about where I want it, so I'm just going to do a quick couple tacks to keep it in place, and then that way I can find my holes and test fit it in the car before I go any farther. Alright, so at this point I have it rough mounted, double shear. It's hanging in there. So now my idea is, right now I have this kind of tied up, very rough, I know, but I'm going to need a longer tie rod, and I'm just wanting to make sure everything works right now. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and stuff this subframe back in the car, and then I think we'll do a little turn test, see what we got going on, and also, you know, check clearance to this, make sure everything's going to work there before I order more parts. Alright, so after that struggle, I got the cross member back in here. everything mocked up. The rack is mounted, and it looks like I will have plenty of steering shaft clearance against that motor mount, and it doesn't look like my angle is going to be too extreme. So I'm pretty positive now I can order the correct spline U-joint and then modify / build the steering shaft that mounts to the Mark III. I don't think that's going to be an issue. What might be an issue is this sticks up a little farther than anticipated. So the front of the oil pan might hit, maybe, and the alternator might be in the way here. So yeah, hopefully the pan clears here. If not, I can space the engine up a little bit because it's not going to stick up very high. I'm also going to have to make my own lines here, which won't be a big deal. But now I can kind of rough mock up my steering angle, and it looks about like what it was with the Supra rack, which it should. I measured my linear travel on this rack versus the Supra rack, and it's roughly the same. So that should be plenty of angle right there. I mean, we're roughly at ride height too. Everything's just very roughed up. And obviously my tie rod crap is very rough. But that should be, and then we don't hit anywhere still. So that should be plenty of angle. Should be almost exactly what we had before. We're close to hitting the tie rod with the wheel, so that tells me we're about the same. So now I get to decide whether I want to continue fabbing in the car so I don't have to drop the subframe again, or just drop the subframe, cut everything, clean everything. So I'll probably take the subframe back out. But I'm very happy. Everything's fitting right now. I might actually put the engine on a cherry picker and set it in here just to check my clearance. I think I'll do that. Alright, I've got the engine back on the cherry picker. I'm just gonna set the engine in here for a moment just to make sure everything clears. Well, boys, it was close. It almost did it. If you can see, we're just hitting the new mount. I can't get. The new mount is hitting just the bottom edge of the lower oil pan. Right down there. Besides that, everything else is clearing. That mount's well out of the way. The bulk of the steering rack input is completely out of the way of the alternator. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than that, but we have tons of space. So the only thing I really have to figure out is that driver's side mount, where the oil pan's sitting on it. So I'm going to mark that, and then when it comes out, I'll know where to cut it and where I have to avoid. Alright, well, it's getting kind of late and it's Sunday, so I'm going to go take the rest of my weekend to just hang out, and I'll probably do this as a part 1 video. We'll probably have to do a part 2. It's going to be too long otherwise. But I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. We've got the rack sitting in there where we need to. And this is where we're going to cut to clearance the lower oil pan where it meets the upper oil pan. And then we'll probably gusset it here, box it in, box this side in as well. Also move it a little bit because obviously I had to put this washer here, so I'm going to move it up and then forward just a skosh. And then obviously it's just cleaning everything up, cutting it so it's all flush, grinding it smooth, paint it. Won't even know it was supposed to have a different rack in it. But yeah, that's going to do it for now. Thanks guys. See you later.